Alright, today I'm going to make a pretty cool feature. I want to be able to drive through this barn in my game Undeliverable. So I'm going to select these bottom faces and extrude them upwards, just so I have an interior for this barn. I'm going to select this door and separate it into its own object. I'm going to select these other doors and delete them. Now I'm going to set the origin point so I can create a box cutter to cut out the front and back of this building. I used auto mirror here, but I accidentally mirrored on the wrong axes, so I'm going to have to redo it. Alright, so now I'm going to use the origin scaling trick to scale this box to the correct size of the door. Alright, with the correct size, I'm going to add a modifier to the barn, Boolean, and then I'm going to do a difference cut, and you can see that my door is cut out. Now, I do have some UVA issues, so I'm going to go in here and fix that. I'm using a texture by Impreza. If you haven't seen his YouTube channel, check it out. It's pretty cool. This texture allows you to scale down your UVs to a single dot and place them on the color of your choice. It really makes it easier to color your models. Alright, with that done, I'm going to have to work on the collisions. That way we can drive through the building, but also hit the building. I'm going to name the door. I'm going to modify this door and bring it down just a little bit so it matches the bottom of the building. And that's looking pretty good. Alright, so I'm going to set the origin right here for the door. I'm going to hide it and start working on the collisions. So I'm going to add in a cube. Unreal uses convex objects for collisions. So if you have an object that's concave like this barn is, you're going to have to make multiple collision objects. So here I'm just scaling out the side because we're never going to go in the side of this building. Block it out. It just has to be close, especially in a fast-moving game like Undeliverable, which is now has a coming soon page on Steam. So check it out. The link's going to be in the description. Alright, now I'm just doing the top here. I'm going to do a loop cut so I can bring up the peak. I'm going to bring these edges down. Alright, so now it looks pretty good. I'm going to do a side panel. Again, I'm just using that scale to origin trick where you set the origin and then you scale on that axis to 0. It gets kind of tedious, but it makes it pretty fast for blocking out collisions. Here I was going to do a little tiny sidewall for this hole. But I decided against it. I'm just going to bring the top down, actually. Alright, now I have to make the 4 front pieces for the sides of the door. Okay, it's just another cube and a bunch of scaling to the origin. Kind of boring, but you got to get it done. I'm going to speed this up and do the rest of these 4 sides. Alright, so my blockout for my collision's looking pretty good. I'm going to go through and name all of these cubes to UCX underscore and then the object name. I'm using a plugin for Blender called Send to UE. Basically, it will send your model and its collisions to Unreal Engine for you. It allows you to make changes and send them in to the editor real time. It's pretty cool. So I'm going to turn on everything I want to export. I'm going to rename the cube for the door to door and hit export. Alright, inside of Unreal Engine now, I can open up my door, check its collisions. Looks good. I'm going to open up my barn. I'm going to do the same thing, check the collisions. Everything looks like it's good. Alright, so I'm going to place the barn static mesh and just test it out and see if I can drive through it correctly. It's always a good idea to test as you're going. So it looks like I can hit barely the edge of the door and it's good. I'm going to drive in and out of the poles. Everything looks awesome. I don't know why, but I wanted to drive through it fast just for fun. Alright, so now I'm going to make a blueprint for this. I'm just going to make an actor blueprint called BP_barn. Add a static mesh for the barn itself. And then I am going to add in some more static mesh objects for the door. Later I'm going to move these doors as you approach and open up the barn. So I'm just going to duplicate the door, move it over. I'm going to place it again. This time I'm using the blueprint just to check it out. Make sure I can hit the door. Yep. I'm going to go inside. Make sure that I can hit the door from the other side. Everything looks good. Now I want to copy these doors over to the other side of the barn. I decided just to copy one of the doors over and then flip it and then copy that same door and scoot it over. Alright, and then I always do a little check just to make sure everything's good. Alright, I'm going to rename these to make them make sense. And I'm going to add in some collision objects to check for when the player is approaching. So add in some box collisions. I'll call this open door 1 because I'm going to have 2, 1 for each side. Make sure it's overlap all dynamic, which the player will be a dynamic object. I just want to overlap. I don't want to stop the player. So I'm going to make it about this big, and we'll see if we need to adjust it as we play. I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this and move it over to the other side of the barn for opening the other side of the barn when you're approaching from that angle. I'm going to use a component overlap on both of those. And then what I'm going to do to get these to open, I thought about a couple different ways to do it. I was going to do a linear interpolate and just move them, but I'm going to end up using a sequence. Now these are experimental classes, the actor sequence component, but I'm going to give it a shot anyway and see how it turns out. Alright, so I'm going to add some tracks. These are just basically like animations. So I'm going to add a track for each door. And then I'm going to add a transform track to that. So I'm going to add a keyframe at 0 with it closed and a keyframe at half a second with it open. And I'm going to do that for all of the doors. And it's kind of important to do them one at a time. I did have some weirdness when I tried to add all the doors at the end and open them. But just do it one at a time. Take your time. Make sure you're putting a keyframe with it closed and then moving the playhead and putting a keyframe with it open. And we got one more door to do. Alright, so that's the door open sequence. Gonna adjust some of the keyframes, make sure they're all the way open, make it easy for our car to go through. Alright, on the event graph, I'm going to use that door sequence, and I'm just going to play it when you enter the collision box, when the begin overlap starts. And I need to do it for both collision boxes. Alright, with both hooked up, let's go ahead and give it a shot. It's really important that you delete your blueprint and re-add it after you mess with the sequence. You saw there that the doors were open by default. I don't know how to fix that, but got to do that every once in a while. So now I'm going to make a door close sequence because I don't want the doors open always after you go through it once. I want it to close and reopen. Same thing as before, adding a track for each of these. We're just going to put the keyframes in the opposite positions. So it's going to start with the doors open. And then at 1 second, the doors are going to close. Yep. Alright, door close sequence. Alright, I'm going to add another collision box. This one's going to be inside the barn. And this is going to play the door close sequence once you've exited the barn. So on component end overlap, I want it to play the close sequence. So let's give it a shot. We'll drive in, doors stay open, drive in, they stay open, but as I'm exiting, they slammed close. So I'm going to try a few things. I'm going to make it a little bit longer, the closing animation, so they don't slam so hard. I'm going to adjust the closing collision box a little bit. Let's give this a shot. Now, if you notice when I was exiting, the doors kind of slammed shut and then reopened. I think it's because I was entering these door open collisions as I was exiting. So that's a lot smoother. But if I exit really slow, you can see that it slams on my car, sends me for a loop. So I need to make a variable to keep track of if the doors are open or not. It's important to use positive variables when you're doing booleans. It just helps it make a little bit more sense. So here I called it door open, but when I want to open the doors, I need to check if the doors are not open. So I use a not. And then down below, I only want to close the doors if they are open. And then I forgot to set the variable at the end of the door closing sequence. Alright, let's give it a shot. So drive in, stay in, drive out, slow, works. All looks like it's working pretty good. Doesn't slam on my car anymore. Let's give it a shot at full blast. Yep, we can make it through. Alright, thanks for watching. I just wanted to show a little bit of what goes into making these kinds of games. If you like what you saw, please visit our Steam page and wishlist our game. It's coming out soon. Thank you.